Makers finally gaining on foreign auto companies. Let's bring back our Fox panel and ask them. Quentin, first to you. Quentin, what do you drive?
What do I drive? I drive a Saturn and a Subaru.
All right, so you split it between the Americans. What do you think? Is it possible that Americans might be gaining on the foreign competitors?
Of course, it's still a very strong brand. It's associated with larger cars that probably won't do as well in the developing world, but they can retool and respond to the market and build well. They get their cost structure underway, which seems to be happening somewhat. It's great for them, yeah.
Pat, what do you drive, and what do you think about this opportunity for the U.S. automakers, which have been struggling, frankly, to kind of get that edge once again?
Well, I drive an Acura, I'm sorry to say. I'd love to be driving an American car, but I think there are just such intense structural problems in the entire American industry between the cost of labor. I think you have a capital-intensive environment. You even saw Toyota come out with the 7-year car loan. We're in the middle of a credit crunch that there's every reason to expect will continue for the rest of the year. So I would like it to be true. I would hope it would be true, but I'm not optimistic about it.
By the way, I remember when Mr. Protectionist was asked what he drives. Pat Buchanan drives a Mercedes, by the way.
No, it's a great question. It's one, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I haven't had a U.S. car, honestly, since I had a Plymouth Barracuda way
Oh, I love those cars.
Ever. And I've owned Toyotas or Hondas since then. But this year, we are looking into getting an American car. I don't think, though, that they're really going to make a big turnaround in the U.S. But we are seeing it in Latin America. GM is outpacing Toyota in Russia, in China, 2-to-1 in India. So they really are making gains. But it's a whole labor issue, I think. And the American people just aren't used to finding them as reliable, although that is changing a bit.
Well, Peter, if what Brenda says is true, that it's a labor issue, that's something that if they can identify it and try and fix that problem, then we get to the cars themselves and the design here, and maybe if they get it right soon, it might work.
Well, hopefully. I mean, I've been a bear on GM for a long time, and they still have a lot of problems. You know, their interest in GMAC, and the domestic market is going to be in trouble because Americans really have borrowed too much money against their cars. They have 6- and 7-year car loans now, and we're going to be in a recession. So what they have to focus on, of course, is the global market. I mean, it's not convincing Americans to buy American cars. It's going to be convincing the Asians and the Europeans to buy American cars because that's where the growth is going to be. Americans, we have too many cars. A lot of Americans, I think, are going to be trading in their cars because they're not going to be able to afford to drive them. But I think you have a booming market in Asia, and that's what GM has to do, is concentrate on how to get exports into the growing auto markets.
Quentin, one thing we haven't talked about are the buyout packages. A lot of buyout packages being offered to the workers, particularly, of course, to the union workers. They want to clear the payrolls to try to get a little more balance to what they pay workers overseas. Will there ever be such a balance?
Probably not, unless there's national health care in the United States, because they're competing against the Japanese, who do have national health care. That takes away a lot of their costs. GM agreed to pension and health care situations in 1947, 1948 that just guaranteed the sun and the moon to workers. The world changed around that, and they really didn't adjust very quickly, and they're paying the price for that. Overseas, they will not have that problem, however.
But Toyota produces cars here in the United States that give lots of jobs to Americans. They are able to find good labor here. It's just starting out at a place that, wasn't 40 years ago.
Let me just give a nod to General Motors here. Let me just say about General Motors is they got in on the Chinese ground floor. They have a Buick plant in China for years. And so they got smart on that level. It's just a matter of getting their designs up to speed.
The sum of all their smartness, in my opinion, is just not enough. They have a few smart things, but you just have to add up all the positives, all the negatives, and in my book, there's negatives.
Although they have been winning the reliability race. A lot of people, in a lot of polls, they've been seen as much more reliable cars than the Japanese.
But the problem is when you travel around, you're in Asia, I mean, you see very few American cars on the road. I mean, I see Caterpillar.
But they're making inroads. They are making inroads, as Brenda was saying.
They're outpacing Toyota in sales in a lot of emerging markets.
But Quentin, if a company like India's Tata comes along with the small people mover and they get that Asian market of India and China, what does that mean for the U.S. companies?
Well, look, I was 6 years in Japan, and the American cars were a real status brand. That was the sign that you'd made it, and it was cool. The problem was they were too big for most Japanese roads, and the car companies really needed to adjust. I think this is a tremendous opportunity to learn. That Tata car, $2,500. Isn't that right? I mean, it's incredibly cheap. GM is going to learn about efficiencies in manufacturing to try and hit that price point, which they could bring home and make themselves stronger here as well.
I mean, it's not like they're new to the automotive industry. They have been, the granddaddy of the car companies. If they're going to learn, I think they really have the slowest learning curve of any company that I have ever seen anywhere.
Well, I can say this about the Tata. Hold on, Quentin, with the Tata here, I mean, there's a lot of discussion about how it wouldn't pass the U.S. safety standards at this point. So, Quentin, you look at something like that.
No, remember Honda way back when, this is when you were like in elementary school, Liz, but Honda had a car for $1,600 they sold in the U.S. Only problem was it kept blowing off the bridges. It lasted about 6 months. It just wasn't built for anything but urban use.
The Volkswagen sold a car for $1999 for years, the Volkswagen Beetle. I mean, I can't even remember how many.
By the way,
years
the smart car, those tiny, tiny little smart cars,
they
pass very well. In fact, they're built like Sherman tanks.
And what are they called?
Go ahead, Quentin. Quick, Quentin.
Pat, to get back to your thing, I think the SUV kind of killed them for a while. They got this big car mindset, but they can move away from that.
Okay.
Well, so we end on a positive note.
Yeah.
You drive what? You've got the car, or you don't have the car?
Believe it or not, I have never owned a car in my life. I have a zero carbon footprint. I am greener than Al Gore. So take that, Mr. Gore.
Do you have a license?
Well,
Yes, I do have a license. I rent cars when I
She's
need
not
it.
American.
We do the hybrid thing, too, but we've got the Acura SUV and GMC Envoy. It's a great car. It's just a gas guzzler. They got to get up to that hybrid thing at that point.
Someday I'll grow up and get a car of my own. All right, a hard high.
Borrow mine.
Thank you.
Yellow taxi, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There you
A
go.
taxi and a subway.